Mike, yeah.
Fuzzy.
He can take you with him on a bus or train, on a highway or on a plane, backstage or on a bike. It's Kevin Klein's Fuzzy Mike.
Hello, and thank you for joining me on another episode of The Fuzzy Mike. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. I appreciate you checking it out. If you're a returning Fuzzy Mike family member, you know that I record my episodes in advance of their release date, which is always on Tuesdays. Today is a significant date for my guest. On this day, 7 years ago, his life and the lives of 50,000 plus other people changed forever. On October 1st, 2017, Todd Blyleven and his wife, Kathy, were enjoying themselves at the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival in Las Vegas. Shortly after the headliner, country musician Jason Aldean, took the stage, gunfire erupted from a window on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel, which was across the street from the concert. A lone gunman fired more than 1,000 rounds, killing 60 and wounding well over 400. The ensuing panic brought the total number of injured to approximately 870. The incident is still the deadliest mass shooting committed by an individual in United States history. Amidst the chaos, Todd Blyleven made sure that his wife and family made it to safety. When they were safe, well, then so was he. But this former Major League Baseball player, the son of a Major League Baseball Hall of Famer, wasn't finished helping people to safety, going back in over 30 times to rescue people. It's a decision that has left him with severe PTSD. And that's why I wanted to talk with Todd. And we eventually talk about October 1st, 2017, and his constant battle with the emotional scars of that night. But first, I needed to talk about nicknames, because he and his dad have two of the all-time greatest. And I also wanted to know what it was like being in the dugout as a 7-year-old with Dave Parker, Kent Tekulve, Hall of Famer Willie Stargell, and Todd's Hall of Fame dad, Bert Blyleven.
It's cool. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, man. Well, I got to admit, you have two of the greatest nicknames ever given in sports. Talk about how you got your nickname from the 1979 Pittsburgh Pirates.
Well, that's my dad. My dad.
I know, but you were Tomato Face.
Oh my God. Yeah. Okay. I thought you were talking about Bert be home by 11. Yeah.
Well, that's the greatest one that Chris Berman ever came up with. Don't you think?
So Tomato Face, Willie Stargell actually gave that to me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I was 7 years old, had bright red hair, freckles, everything. And one day he just started saying, "Hey, you know what, Tomato Face?" He goes, "That's what you look like to me." He goes, "You look like a big old tomato." And it just stuck. And then Phil Gardner and Dave Parker and all the guys were like, "All right, Tomato Face." And that was just my nickname for probably up until I was in high school. And then they started calling me Little Bly. Chris Berman called me Todd be home by 11:30, which was kind of cool. Yeah. But Willie Stargell started that.
Man, you just throw these names around like, they're best friends. And they were at that time for you as a 7-year-old.
Yeah, they were my buddies, my uncles, my pals. They were my resource to learning all about girls or, anything, man. So yeah, it was my dad. I was really lucky. My dad took me around everywhere with him. I was just joined at the hip. So it was awesome.
What was it like watching Tekulve?
Well, when I was young, he looked like he was 8 foot tall because he was super thin, right? So I never understood how that guy could pitch because he's like gawky anyways. But when he would come down and underneath, who didn't want to be Kent Tekulve playing wiffle ball or anything else? So
dude, we did it all the time, man. That was what we wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was just awesome to watch. Yeah.
Nobody had ever seen anything like that.
No.
I hadn't anyway.
No, not at all. Eckersley later, right? He was pretty.
Eckersley and Quisenberry, the late Dan Quisenberry.
Yeah.
Quiz.
Yeah, Tekulve was amazing.
We're talking to Todd Blyleven, his dad, Hall of Fame Major League pitcher for 22 seasons, Bert Blyleven. Chris Berman on ESPN gave him the nickname Be Home Blyleven, one of the greatest, if not the greatest of ever. But, you actually had somewhat of a Major League Baseball career too.
Yeah, I was an up and down guy. Played for a little under 7 years. Angels, Pirates, Milwaukee, all around the country, and then went into major league scouting. So became a scout for 8 years after that, which was awesome.
How difficult was it to try and live up to what your father had achieved?
Oh, geez. I mean, growing up, he was just another dad to me, right? Of course, my friends, I always knew my dad had major importance. They always wanted to go to the ballpark with me, no matter where I was at. I think right around middle school, I started to realize that some of my friends were friends with me just because of the benefits of being, associated with me. But it wasn't until high school when all of a sudden I remember I think I had struck out like 15 in a game, and somebody kept referencing Bert Blyleven's kid, and I'm like, I'm standing right here. I am dominating, this game. You guys aren't even able to touch me. It's me. And so I started to kind of start lash out a little bit, create my own identity. I think that was the hard part, but when I got into it's probably my second year in college. I started to embrace that who I was and that I was my dad's son. And I started to really learn more from him and his teachings. I always learned from guys like Nolan Ryan and Frank Viola and all these, the Marcel Latchmans, which is one of the greatest pitching coaches of all time. And I'd always learned from all those people, and I was like a locked in, right? But when my dad would talk to me about pitching, I'd be like, all right, whatever, you're my dad. But right around my sophomore year in college is when I started to really ask him questions and dive into the mental aspect of the game. And I think that's when that whole kind of Blyleven persona, I embraced it at that point. And when I got into professional baseball, I knew I wasn't going to be able to live up to his accolades. I mean, let's face it, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
He did incredible things. Not everybody can do that, but I just tried to be the best pitcher I could be. And, the comparisons were what they were. I learned how to live with those, and so, but yeah.
When you ended up giving up your career as a baseball player, how did that mess with your identity?
A lot. My whole version of what I valued as success with going out. I had been on the baseball field my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like I was just playing Little League and I had some breaks. I was on the baseball field my entire life from the highest level possible. And when I remember that drive home, I was in Stockton, California, and I was driving home, and I realized, the night before I struck out the side, I had a dominant game. I walked away on my terms. I was missing the family part of my life. I really wanted to kind of dive into what I called the real world. I had different expectations on how that was going to go. And when I all of a sudden started working and I'm delivering water, or I'm cleaning carpets, or I'm just trying to whatever, I was a waiter at one point. I'm like, I'm so miserable. Like I'm not striking someone out. I don't get that Gatorade poured on me. I'm not getting that celebration. I'm not getting the talk after the game from the coaches. It was all gone. And at that point, I really went into a deep depression of trying to redefine myself. And it wasn't up until really 2017 until I realized, like, I don't need to define myself as a Major League Baseball player or a former athlete. I needed to embrace who I am today as a father and a good person in society. And I have a message to share with people to help them stand back up for themselves. And so it was a long journey, Kevin, on how to try to redefine that success. When you're in the boardroom, nobody's patting you on the ass to say, "Hey, great board meeting, man! Like high five to you." You're not running down the hall going, "Yeah," sliding or anything. So it's just different, but yeah.
Well, the one thing that you didn't mention about leaving baseball was, did you miss the competition and the camaraderie?
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't replicate that. I think that's the greatest part about playing sports is you're going to lose, but you're losing as a team, right? And then there's this next day that comes where you're grinding, or you're hitting the weights, or you're running harder, or you're trying to perfect your craft because it means something to the team. And then the aftermath, the celebrations, the just being around your pals. I mean, it's just such a great, great time. Whether you're playing high school or college or professionally like I did, playing sports was just amazing. So yeah, you do miss it a lot.
As a scout, which you were, and you got a World Series ring from the Anaheim Angels at the time. You signed a lot of Major League Baseball players, including Troy Tulowitzki. When you see them sign their contract, how does that compare to your own?
It was cool. I mean, that was the one thing I always enjoyed with being a scout was being able to be fully transparent with families, understanding that I've gone through what they are going through in terms of the athlete perspective. I know how my parents handled my draft, which was not the greatest, just because my dad was a big leaguer, and never really spent time in the minor leagues, and my mom didn't really have much touch of reality in terms of that whole process that players were going through, and at that time, because my dad was in the big leagues at 19. So I didn't have much guidance there. So I wanted to be able to make sure that I provided the guidance. And so when it came time for me to sign a guy like Troy Tulowitzki or Ian Stewart, for example, first rounder out of La Quinta High School, ended up having a pretty good career. I embraced the celebration. That was the funnest part, right? Being in there, watching that athlete sign the contract. I still get goosebumps on it right now, just thinking about it, because you're seeing the parents and all the time and the effort and just everything that they pour in, the sacrifice, the family, the joy around the athlete. And the athlete like just knows, okay, I'm ready to take this on. So yeah, really, really cool stuff, man. I really loved it.
The ring has played a major significance in your life. We are 7 years removed today. I guess the biggest life-altering episode you've ever had.
Yeah, most definitely. Absolutely life-changing. And so you talk about the ring itself. The World Series ring, my dad has two of them, and now he's got a Hall of Fame ring too. But that World Series ring was really, really special because we spoke about defining success. And as a scout, you're grinding, you're 24/7. I've got papers up on the walls of all the players and prospects, and you're doing your best. And you're made to feel like you are, and because you are part of the draft and who the success of your minor league teams to your big league teams. So that year in 2002 with the Angels was really special because I was doing advanced coverage, had some players, like it was just awesome. I was down in the clubhouse, and you got a chance to be a part of that journey. And when Bill Stoneman was up in that GM office, and he opens up that mahogany box, and it's glass top, right? And we're in California, so the sun's shining through his office, and this thing is like just glistening. I mean, it's just sparkling, rubies, diamonds, all these things, the gold. And you put that ring on and it's just there it is, right? I made it through the grind of the post player part. Now I'm embracing what baseball can provide to me as an operational scout, baseball operations business side, right? So I wore that ring out a lot, and a lot of times when we go to Vegas, of course you got the bling, right? So and it's big, it's a giant ring. I'd wear it. People would ask questions. I'd talk about the ring, or lead into me talking about a player, me being a player. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of conversation. It was always positive. Unfortunately, in 2017 on this day, my wife and I and 18 others were at a country concert called Route 91 Music Fest. And we went through a couple different days. I was also going through a lot with my wife at the time and trying to rekindle a marriage that had been derailed at times. So personally, I'm trying my best to define who I was in the corporate space. I was removed from the scouting side because I wanted to be a present stay-at-home dad in terms of being home 9 to 5 for my kids, which I really enjoyed. I would do that all over again, but there we are, we're, at this concert and we're having an absolute blast and things are just super positive. It's been a fun couple days and a madman on the 32nd floor across the street, as we all know, shot down on 26,000 people. And we were right in the first kill zone of that unfortunate craziness. And so to just keep it super short, and I'll get to the ring part, I was able to get my family out super fast. And thank God I was able to recognize where the shooting was coming from in that first round. And got my family out. And once we were out and we were safe outside the gate on Giles Street, I made a choice after helping somebody lay a woman down that had passed, to run back in. And so I sent my wife and my family north to as far away as possible, told them to run, kiss my wife, and told her I love her. And I pray that I'll be okay. And I ran back in. And so after going back and forth multiple times and carrying out people that had been injured under gunfire, being shot at, doing what I could to just keep my boots moving and running. I'm a big old target, but somehow I was missed. I did hear bullets fly by me and hit the turf, and it was surreal. It was something out of a war movie, but 10 times 100. I carried a woman out that was somewhat already gone, and I wanted to get her to somebody that could try to help her stay alive. And that was on Giles Street. I was picking people up, bringing them out, throwing them over my shoulder, carrying them in my arms. I had this woman in my arms. I remember her specifically, and I laid her down gently, and she passed. And a gentleman came up, told me what had happened. I said I didn't really know her. And at that point, I looked down and I had my hand on her waist side, and I saw my ring. And my ring was just staring at me. And I stood up and I just thought, how could I be wearing this in such a time of sadness and depression? Here, this ring symbolized everything that was great about my baseball life to me. And yet it didn't have any significance whatsoever when it comes to real life, right? Life and death. And so I turned my ring around and I went back and kept going. When I got home, obviously the ring came off that night or the next morning, 8 hours later, when I was able to actually get into a shower and wipe all the stuff off me. And that I cleaned my ring pretty good because it had stuff inside it. And I put it in a box, in that same mahogany box, and it's in my safe. And I pray that one day I'll be able to wear that thing again. But for right now, it's still sitting in there, and it symbolizes my greatness and my success on the baseball side. I just haven't had the opportunity, or really maybe the will, to bring it back out and put it back on my finger. But that's a goal of mine one day. So.
But, we were talking about the camaraderie that you have in the clubhouse with your fellow athletes. You look down at that ring when you're helping out the teammates of life that day. I mean, that had to be a motivating factor.
It did. There was a moment afterwards. Let me take a step back. The inspirational part of that whole night was I ran back in. I was running against the grain. After about a few times, I had a couple people that were also going back in. And over the course of hours, more and more people came out of hiding and went back in. So when I would go and bring someone out and set them down, and I'd stand up, and there were, people were throwing water bottles to each other, and I was pouring water all over myself just to try to stay hydrated and re-energized. I would look down, up and down Giles Street, and thousands of people were on top of hundreds of people that had been injured. And it was, I get goosebumps now. It was absolutely motivating and inspiring. Mankind from all walks of life, just helping people in need. And it was incredible. And it gave me energy time and time again. I'm also a huge faith believer, and I believe that I was not alone that night. There's no way I missed in those line of sight unless I was helped in some way. But the end of my 8-hour journey, I disarmed a man with a knife. We were over at Tropicana trying to look for a shooter because we were told there was a shooter in the building, and we're protecting 250 plus people in this hallway, all these crazy things. I'm knocking the door down. We're trying to identify, we're finding people that are just huddled on top of each other because they're hiding everywhere. But at the end of the night, I'm in this ballroom, and that's where SWAT had kind of congregated everybody. And I'm laying down because SWAT had just told me, sir, you can stand down. And I'm down on the ground, and I must have had my hand kind of this way. And my head was pounding. I had a girl going, and she was trying to find me Advil. I'm covered in stuff from carrying injured victims out. So my hat, my clothes, and this older woman behind me says, "Did you play in the World Series?" And it just completely like shifted everything. And she started talking to me. She knew where my mind was. Everybody knew what I had just done, because there were a lot of people come up and thanking me and all these things. And she completely shifted my focus from what I just encountered to, yes, I was a scout. I played professionally. And she started asking me baseball questions. And it really brought me back to, okay, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm not cut. At one point, I thought I was shot in the whole thing, like, but I'm okay. Now is just more of a focus to get back to my wife. But yeah, that ring has had a lot of significance throughout, many aspects of my life.
Well, not only did that woman start kind of getting your mind off of what you had just gone through, I believe somebody that was associated with your dad in the 1979 Pittsburgh Pirates actually called you, who was a combat veteran.
So the story, well, his name is Lee, and it was actually an association through baseball. But yes, he was a combat veteran. Did 3 tours. When I got back to Las Vegas, or when I got back to Dallas, the next day we took a flight out. I was lost. I'm supposed to go pick up my kids. My son was playing in a baseball game. My daughter was with him and the family that was watching them, and I'm supposed to go back to work. And so Lee called me up and said, "Hey, brother, this is who I am. I'm a friend of your dad's." I said, "Yes, sir. I know who you are." He told me exactly for 30 seconds. He told me a story that was relatable to what I experienced, not to that capacity, but he experienced death. He experienced holding death. He knew what I was going to be going through, and he gave me a 72-hour basically survival guide of knowing your speech is going to be stuttered. You're going to have nightmares. You're going to have headaches that are going to pound. You need to be able to talk about it. And he gave me a resource, a pal that I can talk with, and he was there. And all my first responder buddies, Chad Vert out of Northern California is a firefighter. He came to me right away. Brian Wood, former FBI terrorist task force, and Southern California police officer, Mark Maldonado, LAPD, all these different great friends that I had started coming out and sharing their stories of adversity and resilience, and just started to empower me with how to kind of stand up for myself again, or at least start to compartmentalize what was going on with me. And of course, I tried to do it all on my own because that's how we were raised, right?
Yeah.
No blood, no foul. Stand up, stand back up, deal with it. But at one point, I just realized I can't do this on my own, and I'm going to break. I was at that breaking point. I was having nightmares all the time. Waking up, grabbing my wife's leg, screaming at people to get down. I couldn't go anywhere. And it was just horrible. And I got led into a therapist by the name of Diane, and she specialized in EMDR therapy, which I was told by Chad and all these guys to go to, Lee included, and it was a godsend. So I went through a couple therapists to find somebody that was relatable. Finally found my angel Diane, and a year and a half later, she man, it was awesome. So.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm familiar with EMDR. Before we get into that, I want to ask you, what was that reunion like with you and Kathy that night on October 1st, morning of October 2nd?
Oh, so there I am in Tropicana, just been told by 2 SWAT officers that I could stand down. I'm on the ground. stood back up. I went to the restroom, came back. I'm laying there. That's when I had the conversation with the woman about my ring. And it wasn't about probably an hour later, they started to excuse everybody. So now I've got 1% battery life on my phone. And I am trying to track where she's at because I don't know where she's at still. I was able to talk with her for about 15 seconds as we went from the venue, ran over. There was about four of us. We heard that people needed help over behind Tropicana. They had like an ambulance Uber line going on. There were hundreds of people over there that had been injured, loading people in. So we ran over. At that point, I'm on the phone with Kathy when I first arrived on scene, and I'm asking, "Are you okay?" She was basically in a condominium at the Desert Rose Resort, where 4 gentlemen came out and told 25 people, "Hey, come in here. We're gonna guard this place up," because you thought the whole world was under attack. So these 4 brave individuals were, protected everybody that was inside there. So she was protected, thank God. And so there I am now, fast forward to the next morning, and I'm laying there and they're starting to let us get out. And I just wanted to get back to Kathy. And I've got 1% battery life left. I know she's somewhere behind the casino. So now I've got to walk to get to her. But what's above me? It's all the different casinos. And so I'm scared to death. Kevin, I've never been that scared in my entire life, thinking that the sights of some weapon is on me and going to take me out because of everything I did. And I'm finally going to get hit after all this time and running through and putting my life on the line so many times. My luck is up, and I'm walking and I'm trying to like get to her. And so I text her and said, "I know where you're at. I'm coming right now. Meet me in the lobby." And so I got to her. And it was something out of a movie where I walked through the front. She and her brother and his wife are walking through the back by the pool entrance. And we meet right by the desk and we kiss. And that kiss, the embrace, just was everything. It took away all the pain. It took away all the nightmarish crap that I went through. And just I knew that she was safe. That was a huge thing on my mind too, going through all that. But I also I felt alive again. And so yeah, the journey to get back to where we were staying at the Venetian was quite a journey, in itself. But when I got back, I was able to take my shower. And we had a couple of friends that were with us in that night that were really worried about me, came over. We embraced. And yeah, I was just there. I mean, I think there's some new news coverage of me getting back into Dallas, her and I. And we're just, we didn't leave each other's side. I didn't, I had her, I think, probably the entire way, just thinking, okay, there's going to be another situation that happens. You're not going anywhere now. But yeah, it was really, really, it was a beautiful moment.
So a couple of things about that. Number one, this happened right outside of the Mandalay Bay. The Venetian is cleared on the other side of the strip. And you said before you even got out of the Tropicana to go meet up with your wife, Kathy, that you're already looking up at seeing, trying to find if you're going to be the next one. That's immediate PTSD.
Yeah.
It set in that quickly, huh?
Yeah, it really did. Well, I mean, I had probably carried 30 some odd people after everyone kind of reached out over the course of a year or so, telling me, "Hey, thank you. You carried me out. You carried my friend out. You came in, picked them up." There was a lot that went on, getting shot at while I was waving people out. I'd never experienced anything like that. I mean, literally, I'm at one point when we're in Tropicana, again, we're trying to protect 250 people or so that are in the back entrance in the service areas in this long hallway. And there were 2 other corridors that went, right and left. So 3 guys went down the right side. Us other 3 guys went down the left side. And the goal was to try to break through doors to find an active shooter or somebody just to eliminate threats, because we didn't want to get, flanked or anything else from someone because there were all these people. So you're hitting all these things. And I handed my wallet to the EMT, the off duty EMT guy that was with me. I said, here, just take this, because if I get shot, you guys better take him out. And but at least you know who I am. And so you think about all the stuff that you did. I wrestled a guy with a knife, taking him down and disarmed him because he was wheeling it around. And just some crazy guy that was, scared probably out of his mind. But all the stuff that happened, and you put your life on the line for everything. Yeah, that coming out of that Tropicana was extremely scary. When I looked to the left, I could see all the firefighters. I mean, I still get very emotional talking about it now, which is fine. But I looked down and you could see the chaos, and it was consumed. I mean, it was all red lights everywhere, flashing everywhere. And I was right in the middle of all of that. And so when I went right, all of a sudden it was quiet, and it was just me on that road. You look down Vegas Boulevard, there was nothing. Nobody was out. They blocked the whole strip. So it was like walking into zombie land or something, and you're just by yourself. And every step I took, like I mentioned, I think because it was so silent and the chaos was left behind, I felt like it was my time and I was going to get hit. And there was somebody that was going to come out and hit me. I never felt that unsafe before. My armor was completely stripped, and I think as I started to get closer, and probably the embrace and the kiss, and then being around other people gave me safety. And it took me a long time to get to a point where I am today, where I still sit up against the back of the wall when I'm in places, if I'm in church or if I go to a restaurant. I'm identifying exit points. I'm looking at higher elevations for opportunities for bad people to do things. I'm understanding what I can do to get the people I'm with out, get myself out, eliminate the threat if possible, if I can. I go through all of that within the first 5 to 10 seconds of no matter where I go now. And the other part I'm okay with is, I've learned how to be vulnerable and more approachable in this too. So I'm not afraid if I'm at a big baseball conference, for example, and somebody might be saying something and my mind completely went somewhere else, or I'm feeling my trauma kind of come up on me, that PTSD, that I let them know, hey, I'm just going to let you know I have PTSD. I've suffered with some traumatic trauma, and I'm just I feel my anxiety coming up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm just going to step away for a second and refocus myself, and then I'll come back to you. And people are like, okay. And when I come back, all of a sudden, they've probably Googled me, and then they're like, oh my God, are you okay? Like, let's go outside, and it's cool because that's like the compassionate part of people, right? When you're open and honest, like nobody wants to be a jerk. I don't think I've had anybody go, what are you doing? Like, just get over it, not to that extent anyway. So it's, yeah, I think when the more honest and open I've been with this, the more it allows somebody to say, hey, you know what? I've got a story too.
Well, and that's kind of what you do with your podcast, I'm Going In, which is not only a podcast, it's supposed to be the title of the book that should be coming out if it's not already. And then it's your line of clothing, I'm Going In, with that has inspirational sayings on hats like Rise with Strength, and also on T-shirts and hoodies. And you can get all of that information at toddblyleven.com. You go to a concert, you think you're going to have a great time, you think you're going there for safety. How violated did you feel after all of this?
That's one of the parts that I have in my book, where, going through the therapy that I went through with Diane, it was probably about the second or third session that we talked about going in and being there. I was dancing with my niece, and you can hear the gunfire, and then all of a sudden the chaos, the machine gun opened up. what I realized after talking about that and going through that process was I was stripped of my vision of what safety was, my security, my letting myself my guard down. I didn't go into concerts. Yeah, I've been through a lot of different things. I knew where exit points were, but I never really thought, oh my God, this could happen to me. It's only something you see overseas or you hear about every once in a while in the news, but not where it's got an opportunity to hit me personally. So it stripped my entire, uh, I guess, my entire security kind of around myself, what I always thought about and being safe, my entire safety net away from myself.
The night that it happens on October 1st to where you are now, what's the emotional timeline? What is it? Anger at first, and then relief, and then what is that emotional line?
I think you go through confusion first.
Okay.
Anger didn't set in for quite some time for me. It was confusion. It was trying to block out what had just happened. So it's a lot of like trying to just forget things and trying to move forward because life doesn't stop. So all of a sudden I'm at my office. I'm a dad. I'm bringing my kids to school. I'm trying to like be strong, and I was not strong at all, which was an uncharted territory for me. So it was definitely confusion was the biggest part on what was happening to me. Why is this happening to me? And then I went through this phase of why did I do that? I put my life out on the line with my kids being home, and I could have been killed. And why did I do that? And then comes this empowerment part when I realize I need help and I'm going to stand back up for myself. The anger part for me really didn't happen for probably months and months after, when I was getting contacted a lot more through Facebook Messenger, different people. There was a Find Your Heroes page that people were saying, hey, you need to go on there. Someone's looking for you. They just described you as a person. I'd have my picture. I'd be like, well, I don't know if this is me or not. Yes, it's you. And there was a post that went up, and I ended up talking to this girl, and she said, you ran in, you grabbed our friend, and all of a sudden you're like running out and we're chasing you. And you put her up on a truck, and we jumped into the back of the truck with her. There were three of them, and the truck drove off. And I'm like, okay. And they described the injury, which was horrible, on what happened with this girl. And I said, I'm really sorry that happened, thinking that she passed because I had, women pass my arm. And the girl says, no, she lived. She's
Wow.
alive. Yeah. So there was like this uplift moment where I'm like, yes, okay, this is cool. And then all of a sudden I started to get really mad. I was like, that girl should have never, ever been in that place. The girls that passed on my arm should have never, ever died. And when Kathy and I got a chance a couple years later, when we walked through the Garden of Healing in Vegas, we went back and revisited everything, which was really weird. I'm on my walk going down, it's 58 different memorials through this pathway, beautiful pathway. All the family members were decorating their crosses, their memorials. You're seeing pictures. It's humanizing every single one of those souls. And I got about 5 in and found one woman that had passed in my arms. A couple more down, here's another one. And then another one, Kathy said, I think this is one of the girls you mentioned. And I looked, and it was her. And the girl with the ring. And she was a softball player. And she had a life. And at that point, that anger comes back out again. Now, I've never, ever wanted to know anything about the shooter. I don't want to humanize that evil being or any of these people that are doing these horrible things. But I was angry at that black soul. I was angry at that dark shadow of a soul that had their finger on that trigger, thinking it was a good thing to just take people's lives, and just cowardly. cowardly, so that's the anger part I got mad at. And then I learned how to manage that part of it, because I didn't put it towards, thank God, towards anyone that I know. I didn't get irritable enough to like get angry at anybody.
Huh.
I learned enough how to trauma map myself through EMDR, which really helped me a ton. But yeah, that was kind of the emotional part. Now I'm on an uplift. I'm on an empowerment trip on just being happy. And every day I wake up, I fold my sheets. And I just pray that today's a better day than yesterday, and that there's just more love in this world. It took a part of me away that I'll never ever be able to get back. And I'll never ever be able to forget about that instant when life changed and I thought, oh my God, I could die. And my whole goal was to get my wife out. That
Yeah,
was
I
the intent.
remember hearing you say in a TED talk that you wanted to stand tall because you're 6'5", 250 pounds, and you wanted to take the bullet and protect Kathy and your nieces and everybody else who was with you. So,
Yeah.
where does that come from? Where does that belief, that strength come from?
I think it was the way that I was raised. I think, I have a late grandfather that was a Marine gunny. He was a long career Marine. My other grandfather was, had me, I was a devil pup. He was a career Navy, and so we'd go down to Camp Pendleton. And my dad was raised as a tough individual, just watching him as an athlete. I think the sports competitive side of me, I was a tough athlete. I pitched with broken ribs and never complained of pain, right? That was our generation too. We'd fall off a bike, we'd get back up. Yeah, we're bloody, but who cares? We're having fun. I'd fall out of a tree, break my arm. It doesn't matter. You get back up and you keep your boots moving forward. I was a big country guy. I loved rodeo. Um, not that I wanted to inflict pain on myself, but in that moment, I think that I've always tried to help others. And in that given moment, my true character rose, where I sacrificed myself mentally for the well-being of my wife and others to live. And I knew that in that given moment, that if I fell, that the story would be told that I fell helping others and not being selfish and just helping myself. And I'm not saying anything about anybody else. You
Of
have to do
course.
what you have to do in that moment. But my story, my the way I was raised, I was built for that, to be able to help and go in. And I think that's where my divine faith comes in too, Kevin. I think that I look back on what kind of shape I was in back then. I wasn't in the greatest shape, not like playing shape. I wasn't in the shape to lift up 30 dead weight type bodies and run them out consistently with a few sips of water and pouring water over myself as a refresh, to keep doing that over and over consistently for over an hour of just the carrying of people. I wasn't in that kind of shape. So I firmly believe that I
Well,
wasn't
it's
going to
amazing
be.
though what
Yeah,
adrenaline can do. Adrenaline can
totally.
totally
Yeah.
offset lack of shape.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm strong. Don't get me wrong. Like
Oh,
I'm
I
strong
get
enough to
it.
be able to
Yeah.
do all that. But yeah, I think in that defining moment though, um, I have a lot of people that say, hey, I would have done the same thing.
Yeah.
No, you don't know. Yes, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to tell you right now, if God forbid I'm in that situation again, I know that I'm going to go towards the fight. I know what I need to do. But before all that happened, I also said, yeah, I'm going to do the same thing. But I saw a lot of brave people run. I saw a lot of first responders run. I heard stories, first responders, guys that were super tough, women that were super tough, end up 8 stories up behind a bed, protecting themselves in someone else's room. They're knocking on rooms. I mean, people were scattered everywhere because you never know how you're going to react in that moment. I was just, I I praise my dad and my mom for raising me the way they did. I praise my grandparents for raising me the way that they did. I learned my morals and my values there. And in the time of absolute need, I was completely proud of myself for putting my life on the line for others.
Well, I read an article, and to nobody's surprise, Kathy says, I wasn't surprised that he went back in. Your dad said, I'm not surprised that he went back in. Friends of yours have said, I'm not surprised. As a matter of fact, it goes all the way back to high school, Todd Blyleven, when you saw a car flip over, you rescued a guy while you were in high school. So that impassionate, that compassionate part of you was born really early.
Yeah, I think so. I think too, being around Major League Baseball athletes or incredible athletes that were always pushing themselves to the limit every single day to try to be the best person they could be. Maybe for me, because I didn't end up living out that dream that I had as a kid, that I just, when that moment of opportunity happened, to be able to jump in and do something to help someone else, regardless of the impact it would have on me later in life, it was what I was supposed to do. I mean, I remember, Kevin, that incident in the Connie Mack World Series in Farmington, New Mexico. Guy flying down the highway it was a back road. We were going to someone else's house, me and some of my teammates, and car flips, and it was a big truck, and flames were coming up, and big old Indian guy, and so I ran in and unbuckled him and pulled him out, and fire came in and everything else. They're like, what? Why would you do that? What am I supposed to do? Let the guy burn? Like, you can't do that. So, yeah, could the truck have exploded and I would have died? I wasn't thinking about that at that time. I just wanted to get him out. Or when I was scouting, coming over the grapevine from Northern California into Southern California, a minivan rolled. Family members were in it. It was a mom and a dad, kids, and a grandma. And, I'm driving down, I'm right behind them. I see it happening. I go over the curbs, total disregard of my truck, slam into to where I'm supposed to be, hop out, and thank God someone else was behind me. We're lifting. It was on that side, so we're lifting people up. I'm putting the kids in my truck, and we're getting the mom and dad out and the grandma, airlifted out. I pray to God, they lived. Not sure about the dad, but just things that you do, right? I don't want to be that person that keeps driving by. I don't want to be the person that sees something or somebody that needs help and just walk by and ignore them because I need to get to a meeting, or I don't want to be involved with it. No, BS. Make yourself available. You're there for a reason. You're put there for a reason to say something, to do something, to help someone in need. And, not to say I want everybody to jump into a firefight, or you got to protect yourself. But I was just proud that I was able to do what I did.
And how much of a sense of satisfaction and overwhelming pride do you get when your dad says, I'm proud of you, son?
That was huge. My dad's always, he, he was raised to be the best, and he was the best. And we, raised with that no blood, no foul, get over it. And I bring it up, I brought it up in a couple different interviews, when we're sitting at the house, and it was after the shooting. And he said, when do you think you're going to get over this? And I said, Dad, I don't think this is something you just get over. And he realized, in that moment too, that it's not. It's not something that his son is just going to be able to think about. Well, other people deal with this too. The sun comes up tomorrow. Keep going. You're fine. You're not the only one that's gone through this, because not a lot of people go through that. And thank God, even though it seems like it's more frequent, but it's still somewhat a small niche of people that experience that, and especially do what I did and see what I saw. And it put it on a different level playing field to where my dad started showing more compassion and really understood how I was hurt. And that meant a lot to me. And not just I knew my dad would always be there. My dad would die for me. My dad would do anything for me and to help me. But I knew at that point that my dad would do anything mentally and emotionally for me at that point. And it was big. It really means a lot. He says, I'm proud of your son all the time. And it's not just because of what I did in Vegas. It's because of the man that I am.
Absolutely.
It's because of my character, right? And
Yeah.
that's what makes me super happy and excited, that
Fulfilled,
validated. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were raped of your innocence. You were raped of your comfort. You were raped of your security on October 1st, 2017. I have listeners to the Fuzzy Mike who have been sexually raped, who have been emotionally raped. They suffer PTSD. What do you say to them? How can they overcome the trauma that they have experienced, or can they?
Yeah, I think that you can overcome it. I think you can learn how to live with it. I think you can, I call it like trauma mapping. So you recognize, yes, I have this trauma, something really bad happened to me. I'm going to embrace that. I'm going to keep it out in front of me. I'm going to know that it's there. I'm going to walk with it in my life, with it being out in front of me. And I'm going to learn as an individual now how I can take my next step forward, whether it's going into a grocery store, whether it's getting into a new relationship, whether it's doing whatever it is that sometimes brings that trauma back on towards you. I'm going to learn what those spidey senses feel like. And if I can learn more about myself and keep that trauma out in front of me, I'm going to all of a sudden start seeing life in a more beautiful light. It revitalizes you. It gives you new purpose, knowing that you can walk with this. It's not going to conquer you. You're going to learn how to keep this spatial gap between you and your trauma. And when that starts to come back, like when I get into a crowded place and I feel like, okay, I'm feeling it come on. I can feel my anxiety come up. I can feel the back of my throat getting knotted. I'm starting to stutter speeches. I can't think super clear. I'm going to remove myself for about 5 minutes. I'm going to go into a bathroom where it's quiet. I'm going to get to a safe spot for me. I know where those are at now because I've learned those over the course of 7 years. And so when I reapproach that scene, I'm in a much more better place. I'm in a protected place. I've got my security fence up around me. I have my body armor on. Maybe I didn't have my helmet on. Maybe I didn't have my chest protector on. Maybe I didn't have my sword. Whatever that is to you, I have it now. Now I'm able to step back into that environment a little bit more comfortable and calm and collected. And I think that's the biggest advice that I could probably give to somebody that's dealing with trauma or has had a horrible situation happen in their life. You have to embrace it. Unfortunately, it's never going to go away. So trauma map it. Map that how you navigate to get to that trauma and how that trauma navigates itself to get to you. And when you can figure out all those little hiding spots and everything else that it hits, that it jumps back on you, you've won. You've conquered that. And when you conquer it, Kevin, there's nothing that you could ever not do in your life. You are empowered. You're strong. You're like a damn lion. And there's nothing that could ever stop you because you own that now, right?
Yeah.
That's the whole part of it. So I'm not a big believer in like getting over it or anything else, but you can overcome it for sure. And I put a guide on my website. I built this like just 12-page, really easy to read guide, has 3 different stories, and it teaches you how to go through what I just experienced or what I explained. And it also has some education on how you can reach out and be a force for others that might be going through something similar, to help others in a time of need as well. So
ToddBlyleven.com is where you can go to get that. So I think you've already answered my question that I was going to ask, but because you have physical stature, because of you are a strong individual who carried 30 plus bodies off of a battlefield, basically, mental strength to me sounds like it's more powerful than physical strength.
100%. You have to mentally will yourself to keep your boots moving forward, to stand up, to walk tall again for yourself, and help others walk tall for themselves. The mental approach, it goes back to even my baseball days, talking to guys like Kenny Revisa, the late Kenny Revisa, that was one of the best sports psychology minds in all of baseball. And he used to tell us all that if we would throw a ball or throw two balls or throw three balls to the pitcher, to walk around and identify something out in the field that allowed your mind to escape to that moment, whether it was a tree in the outfield or a pillar. How did that pillar get there? What was that tree like? But it was just about mind separation, right? And then to refocus yourself and get back on that rubber and toe up and deliver the best pitch possible. And that's all we're trying to do in life. Every day something knocks you back, right? And it's not has anything to do with your physical form, but mentally we get knocked down every day, especially in the society that we live in. The news, we're attached to our phones. We get a notification that something, God forbid, happened in our neighborhood, or there's something going on overseas, or whatever that is that's directly impacting our own anxiety levels. So you need to be able to embrace that. Understand where you're at. Build a safe spot around your home or in a room or while you're out. Understand how to get yourself to that centered self again, where you're safe and you're strong, and then refocus and take your boot and move it forward.
Is that
so
still
the
something
mental
that
aspect is huge.
Is that still something that you're learning how to do 7 years later?
I learn every single day, Kevin, because you never know what is going to happen. Yeah. You get a different call, different anxiety level that pops up. But I've tried to just learn, continue to learn, never think that you know everything. I'm on a couple different boards with some trauma response teams, Restoration Ranch in Colorado that does some amazing work for first responders. I talk to Navy SEALs, all kinds of different people that have experienced a lot of really bad things, from business leaders to sports professionals to my faith, and just having that divine connection. It's not hard. If you just want it, then you do it. And if you don't, I'm my birthday just passed, and I turned 40 again. Why? Because I liked being 40. And I just want to be 40. I don't want to be 50 some odd years old. I want to be 40. And so mentally, I'm going to do that because I feel that way. So yeah, just walk tall for yourself.
Oh, hell, brother, I still feel like I'm 18.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I got the gray right here. So
man, I'm pushing 55, my friend. So yeah, I've got considerably more gray than you. So well, hey man, there is no such thing as a physical Hall of Fame of life, but you're a first balloter, bro.
I appreciate that very much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And toddblyleven.com is where you can go. I highly encourage you to go there because there's a lot of information there about how to deal with PTSD. There's a lot of TED Talks that you've done on your YouTube channel. Also, listen to the I'm Going In podcast. Fantastic stuff. You get great guests on there all the time. So thank you for coming on the Fuzzy Mike. And hey, man, thanks for being a friend.
Kevin, yeah, definitely. We've connected a few times, and this was an absolute blast. You're a super pro, and I really appreciate you having me on your show. It's pretty awesome.
A lot of people consider athletes heroes. They're capable of doing spectacular things, stuff that so few can do, which is inspiring for sure. And Todd saw, up close and very personally, what many Pittsburghers consider heroic efforts from their World Series winning baseball team of 1979. They were only the fourth team at the time in Major League Baseball history to come back from a 3-1 deficit to win the World Series. But friends, it was a then 7-year-old boy, bright-eyed and tomato-faced, who was the biggest hero on that bench. We just didn't know it yet. My thanks to Todd Blyleven for sharing his story and giving us some instructions and ways to cope with our own trauma. You can follow Todd on his podcast, I'm Going In, and through his website, toddblyleven.com. And don't forget, on Wednesdays, my 25-year morning radio partner, Tim Tuttle, and I bring you the Tuttle and Klein Show on these same sites where you're listening to the Fuzzy Mike. It's unscripted, unfiltered, and yeah, unbelievably funny. My weekly favor is that you help me build the Fuzzy Mike audience. You can do this by telling someone about the podcast, sharing it on your social pages, or by giving it a rating. The Fuzzy Mike is hosted and produced by Kevin Kline. The Fuzzy Mike professional voice guy is my friend Zach Sheesh from the Radio Farm. Social media director is Trish Klein. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm grateful. See you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Fuzzy Mike with Kevin Kline. Check back often and stay fuzzy, friends. Fuzzy Mike is a presentation of the Kevin Kline Fuzzy Mike Industry, Incorporated, LLC.